Ethan Cole sat alone in the cockpit of his ship, the hum of the engine a steady reminder that there was no turning back. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, cold and distant, but his mind was focused on a single mission: save the child. He had read the reports a dozen times, memorized every detail, yet he could not shake the weight pressing on his chest. The council had told him the alien queen's child was held in a Zerthian facility, deep inside a war-torn sector of their planet. No one had ever returned from that area alive. Yet here he was, a human soldier, chosen not for his strength but for his unpredictability. In the council's words, humans do things other species cannot imagine. Ethan knew that meant relying on instinct and creativity, not just weapons or armor. He glanced at the holographic map projected in front of him. Red zones blinked with warnings: heavily patrolled areas, collapsed cities, radiation pockets. Somewhere in that chaos was the child he had to bring home. Far below, the planet burned. Cities lay in ruins, their twisted metal frames jutting into the smoky skies. Smoke and ash drifted like ghostly rivers through the broken streets. Ethan tightened his grip on the control lever, feeling a mix of fear and determination. He had faced dangerous missions before, but nothing like this. This was not about strategy or conquest. This was about saving a life, about giving hope to a queen who had already lost so much. He remembered the first time he had seen her. The council had shown him a recording, the image of Lyra, the alien queen. She stood tall, her silver-blue skin shimmering under the alien sun, her eyes filled with grief and fury. Her child had been taken during an attack, and she had sent messages across the stars, desperate pleas for help. The moment Ethan saw the child's face, small and frightened, his resolve solidified. This was not a political mission. This was personal, even if he didn't know her personally. As he entered the planet's atmosphere, turbulence shook the ship. Ethan gritted his teeth and adjusted the thrusters, navigating through the toxic clouds that hid the city below. The council's sensors could not detect him here, but that did not mean the enemy was unaware. The Zerthians were ruthless, and their patrols were relentless. One wrong move could mean death. Landing was the hardest part. The streets were uneven, debris scattered everywhere. Ethan guided the ship carefully, avoiding collapsed towers and molten streams. Finally, he found a narrow gap between two ruined buildings, a small flat space that could hold the craft. With a careful push of the controls, he landed silently, the engines almost inaudible amidst the chaos. Ethan took a deep breath and unstrapped himself from the cockpit. He could feel the planet's gravity, heavier than Earth's, pressing down on him. Every step forward would be a challenge, but he did not hesitate. The mission was clear: find the child, avoid detection, return alive. He checked his gear: a lightweight exosuit, a plasma sidearm, and a set of cloaking devices borrowed from Lyra's forces. The suit adjusted automatically to his body, providing enhanced strength and agility. He touched the wrist console, reviewing the map again. The facility was to the east, nestled within a valley surrounded by jagged cliffs. The only path was through a narrow canyon, which meant he would be walking right into enemy territory. As he moved, Ethan could see signs of the ongoing war. Burned-out vehicles, shattered walls, and scattered supplies marked the paths. Occasionally, a Zerthian patrol passed by in the distance, their tall, insect-like bodies moving with mechanical precision. They were dangerous but predictable in their patterns. He memorized their routes, calculating the best time to move. Timing would be everything. The first challenge came sooner than expected. A collapsed bridge blocked his path, and beneath it, a river of molten metal flowed, hissing and glowing. Ethan studied the area, spotting a series of jagged rocks protruding from the river. He calculated the jumps carefully, leaping from one rock to the next. The heat was intense, and sparks flew with every misstep, but he made it across, landing with a roll that absorbed the shock. He paused for a moment, catching his breath. The facility was close, but he was not yet safe. Sensors on his suit detected movement ahead. Two patrols were approaching from opposite directions. Ethan pressed a button on his wrist console, activating the cloaking field. His body shimmered and became nearly invisible, blending with the ruined landscape. He moved slowly, every step calculated, every breath controlled. As he approached the perimeter of the facility, he noticed something strange. The walls were reinforced with an energy field, something humans rarely encountered. Ethan crouched behind a pile of rubble, studying it. He remembered the council's instructions. The field could be disabled from the control panel inside, but only if he could bypass the outer sensors. One mistake, and the alarm would trigger, bringing every Xerthian in the sector down on him. Ethan scanned the area looking for weaknesses. He spotted a maintenance hatch at the base of the wall, partially hidden by debris. Carefully, he approached it, using a tool to bypass the lock. The panel sparked as he worked, sweat running down his face. Finally, the hatch clicked open. He slipped inside, moving through narrow maintenance tunnels that led directly into the heart of the facility. The tunnels were dark and smelled of burning metal. Ethan's suit illuminated the path ahead with a soft blue light. He could hear distant voices, the Xerthians communicating in a sharp, clicking language. He paused, listening carefully. The child's cries echoed faintly through the corridors. He followed the sound, careful not to make a sound himself. Finally, he reached the holding area. The child was there, small and fragile, with wide eyes filled with fear. Her skin had a soft luminescence, a mix of her mother's silver-blue hue and something uniquely hers. Ethan knelt down, keeping his voice low. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here to take you home." The child hesitated, staring at him with suspicion. Ethan extended his hand slowly, letting her make the choice. After a tense moment, she reached out, and he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but her presence was powerful in a way he could feel. He knew immediately that she was the hope of an entire species, and keeping her safe would define the rest of his mission. Just as he turned to leave, an alarm blared through the facility. The Xerthians had noticed the breach. Ethan's heart pounded. He adjusted his grip on the child and sprinted down the corridor, using a combination of stealth and quick thinking to avoid capture. Security doors closed behind him, trapping some of the guards, while others pursued him relentlessly. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered a ventilation shaft shown on the schematics. It was narrow, just enough for him to fit, but it would be a difficult climb. Without hesitation, he lifted the child and crawled into the shaft. The metal groaned under his weight and sparks flew from damaged wiring, but he moved steadily, keeping calm under pressure. Outside the facility, the landscape was chaotic. Fires burned across the ruins, and the smoke made it hard to see. Ethan ran, using the shadows and ruined buildings as cover. He could hear the Xerthians behind him, but they were slower, hindered by their size and armor. He ducked behind debris, took careful aim, and used his sidearm to disable security drones that blocked his path. Each shot was precise, conserving energy and ammunition. Hours seemed to pass, though it was only minutes. Ethan pushed himself harder, driven by the child's safety and the knowledge that Lyra was waiting. He remembered her face from the recording, the desperation, the hope. That image propelled him forward, giving him strength he did not know he had. Finally, he reached a canyon edge where he had hidden his extraction ship. The engines were already warm, ready for departure. He placed the child in the safety harness, securing her tightly. She clung to him, no longer afraid but trusting him completely. Ethan smiled briefly, a rare moment of relief amidst the chaos. As he lifted off, Xerthian fire streaked past, narrowly missing the ship. Ethan maneuvered with skill and precision, dodging energy blasts and navigating the twisted canyons. Every second counted, but he kept calm, focusing on one goal: escape. Above the planet, he breathed a sigh of relief. The facility was behind him, the child safe in his arms. But he knew the mission was far from over. Lyra was waiting, and the journey to reunite mother and child would not be simple. The galaxy was dangerous, full of enemies who would not hesitate to strike. Still, Ethan felt a sense of purpose stronger than fear. Humans were often underestimated, their abilities doubted, yet here he was, defying odds that seemed impossible. He thought of Lyra and her child, and a quiet determination filled him. He would see them reunited, no matter the cost. As the stars stretched ahead, Ethan adjusted the course for Lyra's stronghold. The child rested against him, her breathing steady. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a moment of hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humans had a way of surviving, of finding solutions when none seemed possible. And Ethan Cole intended to prove that once again. The journey was just beginning, but one thing was certain: she was safe. And that was everything. Ethan Cole held the young alien girl tightly as the ship soared through the atmosphere, leaving the burning ruins of the Zerthian facility behind. Her small hands clutched at his armor, and he felt the weight of responsibility heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. Each second mattered. Every delay could mean the difference between life and death. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, aiming for the coordinates Lyra had given him. The journey would not be easy. The Zerthians were not only ruthless, but they had vast networks of sensors and patrols that spanned the entire sector. The girl, whose name he now knew was Arya, had stopped crying, but her wide eyes reflected fear and confusion. She looked up at Ethan and whispered, "Is my mother safe?" Ethan forced a reassuring smile, though his heart pounded. "She's waiting for you, Arya," he said. "I promise you'll see her soon." She nodded slightly but pressed closer to him, and he could feel the tension in her small frame. The galaxy was full of dangers, but he would navigate them all if it meant keeping her safe. As they approached the first checkpoint of the Zerthian surveillance grid, Ethan activated the cloaking module. The ship shimmered and seemed to disappear against the backdrop of the star-streaked sky. He held his breath as the sensors flicked past, silent and unaware of their presence. It was a small victory, but every success was a reminder of how fragile the situation was. A single mistake could expose them. Hours passed as Ethan navigated asteroid belts and dodged patrol drones. The girl eventually rested against him, exhausted from the events of the day. He took this moment to check the ship's systems and plan the next stage of the mission. Lyra's instructions were clear: avoid the main space lanes and approach the stronghold from the north. The northern approach was dangerous but less monitored. It required precision, flying through a canyon of floating rock debris that could easily shred a ship if misjudged. Ethan's hands moved with practiced skill, guiding the ship through the narrow gaps. Sparks flew as the hull scraped against jagged stone, but he maintained control. He had done impossible maneuvers before, but now, with a child in his care, there was no room for error. One false move, one miscalculation, and everything could end here. As night fell on the alien planet below, Ethan's ship began its descent toward Lyra's territory. The landscape was breathtaking yet foreboding. Towering crystal mountains glowed faintly under the alien moon, rivers of shimmering liquid cut across the land, and vast forests of bioluminescent plants waved in the wind. Despite the beauty, Ethan kept his focus. This world was a war zone, and danger lurked in every shadow. Suddenly, alarms blared within the ship. Ethan swore under his breath. The Zerthians had tracked a small energy signature from the facility. They were now aware someone had escaped. Patrol ships were moving rapidly toward his location. He grabbed the controls and dove the ship behind a ridge of crystalline rock. The hull shook as energy blasts struck the surface near them, but the ship held firm. Ethan adjusted the shields and plotted a course that would take them through a narrow canyon system. The patrols were fast, but humans were unpredictable. He intended to use that to his advantage. He leaned over to Arya. "We need to be very quiet, okay?" "You trust me?" she nodded, gripping his armor tighter. Ethan smiled. "Good, stay calm and we'll get there together." The chase was relentless. Xerthian ships darted through the skies like predatory insects, firing energy beams that could vaporize anything in seconds. Ethan weaved through the canyon, narrowly avoiding obstacles, using every skill he had learned over years of military training. He drew on the human advantage, unpredictability. No alien ship had ever faced maneuvers like these. One moment he dove straight, the next he banked sharply, twisting in ways that defied their calculations. Several patrols collided or were forced to retreat, and Ethan allowed himself a brief, grim smile. As they neared the outskirts of Lyra's territory, Ethan felt a surge of hope. The stronghold was not far, but the area around it was heavily guarded. Massive energy turrets lined the perimeter, and hundreds of ground patrols roamed the streets below. There was no way to land openly. Ethan needed a plan, one that would get them inside without drawing attention. He reviewed the map projected on the cockpit's console. A drainage tunnel led directly into the heart of the stronghold. It was a tight squeeze, but it was their only chance. He maneuvered the ship carefully toward the tunnel entrance, the hull scraping the edges as he slipped inside. Sparks flew, and the air grew thick with heat, but the ship fit. Inside the tunnel, they were hidden from the sensors, and Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe. Once the ship was parked safely, Ethan unstrapped himself and helped Arya out. She looked around in awe at the dimly lit tunnel walls, the strange markings etched into the stone, and the distant hum of machinery. "This is amazing," she whispered, her fear momentarily replaced with curiosity. Ethan smiled softly. "We'll explore more once we know you're safe. Right now, we need to move quickly." The tunnel led to an underground entrance into the stronghold. Ethan moved with caution, listening for signs of patrols. The guards were humanoid but taller and stronger than humans, with enhanced reflexes. He activated the cloaking device and slipped silently past them. Arya followed, holding his hand tightly. Her small fingers were warm, and the simple touch reminded him of what was at stake. Inside the stronghold, the corridors were labyrinthine, lit by soft energy lights that reflected off polished surfaces. Ethan kept his eyes on the map, navigating the twists and turns with precision. Every corner could hide a patrol or a security drone. The walls occasionally vibrated with the hum of energy weapons being tested, a reminder of the advanced technology surrounding them. They approached the central chamber, where Lyra awaited. Ethan could feel the tension in the air. The child had sensed it too, her small body pressing closer to him. "Is it far?" she whispered. "Yes," he replied, "but we are almost there. Stay strong, little one." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Ethan froze. Two guards appeared, scanning the area. He pressed Arya against the wall, holding his breath. The guards passed, unaware of their presence. Ethan exhaled quietly and continued moving. He knew these moments could be the difference between success and failure. Finally, they reached the chamber door. Ethan examined the locking mechanism, complex and alien, requiring both a biometric scan and a security code. He accessed his wrist console, running a decryption program he had modified for this exact moment. Sparks flew as the system resisted, but after 10 seconds the lock disengaged. Ethan slowly pushed the door open. Inside, Lyra stood, regal and powerful even in her worry. Her eyes widened as she saw Arya. "My child," she whispered, voice trembling. The girl ran forward and Lyra lifted her into her arms. Ethan stepped back, watching the reunion with a mixture of relief and admiration. The bond between mother and child was immediate and undeniable. Lyra held her daughter tightly, tears in her eyes. "You saved her," she said, turning to Ethan. "I cannot thank you enough." Ethan shook his head, a modest smile on his face. I only did what I had to. She's safe, and that's all that matters. The celebration was short-lived. Even in the stronghold, the Xerthians had traced their location. Alarms began to sound, and Lyra's soldiers mobilized. Ethan knew their escape would not be simple. He quickly formulated a plan. The stronghold had hidden exits, maintenance tunnels, and access to small transport ships. They could use these to evade the patrols. As they moved through the stronghold, Ethan observed the soldiers coordinating with precision. He realized the aliens respected human ingenuity, even though they had not fully understood it. He led them through hidden paths, using tactics that combined stealth, speed, and misdirection. The child remained calm in his arms, trusting him completely, a sign that their bond had already formed. Finally, they reached a small hangar where a transport ship awaited. Ethan guided Lyra and Arya inside, checking the systems to ensure a safe takeoff. The engines roared to life and they lifted off, just as Xerthian patrols closed in on the stronghold. The chase resumed, but now the stakes were even higher. Ethan maneuvered with skill, weaving through canyons and asteroid fields, keeping both mother and child safe. As they reached the edge of the atmosphere, Lyra looked at Ethan with a mixture of gratitude and respect. "You humans, you are remarkable," she said. Ethan shrugged. "We do what we must. I've learned that when lives are at stake, ingenuity and courage are more powerful than any weapon." The journey ahead was still dangerous. The Xerthians would not give up easily, and the route back to safety was fraught with hazards. But Ethan was confident. With Arya safe and Lyra reunited with her daughter, the mission was a success. More importantly, the bond formed during these trials would endure, a testament to the strength of humanity in a galaxy full of unknown dangers. As the stars stretched before them, Ethan looked at the child asleep in Lyra's arms. He felt a sense of accomplishment and quiet satisfaction. They had survived the impossible, defied the odds, and proven that humans could face challenges no alien could predict. He knew the final part of their journey, the full reunion and securing peace, was still ahead, but for now they were together, and that was enough. Ethan Cole adjusted the ship's controls as they soared through the upper atmosphere. Lyra held her daughter Arya tightly, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of pursuit. The relief in her face was visible, but Ethan knew better than to let his guard down. The Xerthians were relentless, and their forces would not easily abandon the chase. Every second counted, and every decision could make the difference between safety and disaster. The planet below stretched like a quilt of light and shadow. Cities burned faintly in the distance, evidence of the war that had ravaged the land for months. Ethan's eyes narrowed as he plotted their course through a series of narrow valleys and high mountain passes. The Xerthians, expecting a direct flight to Lyra's stronghold, would likely monitor the obvious routes. Ethan relied on unpredictability, human creativity, and sheer nerve. Arya leaned against her mother, still trembling slightly but calmer than before. "Will we be home soon?" she whispered. Ethan looked at her through the rearview console, her wide eyes reflecting both hope and fear. "Soon," he said softly. "We're almost there." "Just a little longer." The child nodded, trusting him completely, and Ethan felt a sense of responsibility heavier than any armor he had ever worn. The first wave of pursuit came unexpectedly. Xerthian interceptor ships appeared on the radar, faster than any human vessel Ethan had faced. He pushed the ship forward, diving into a canyon where the ships would have difficulty maneuvering. Energy beams struck the walls around them, sending sparks and dust into the air. Ethan guided the ship through tight twists and turns, the hull scraping dangerously close to jagged rock edges. One wrong move and the ship would be torn apart. Lyra's hand tightened around Arya. "Be careful," she whispered. Ethan's voice was calm, reassuring. "I've got this. Just hold on." He banked sharply, dodging another volley of energy blasts. The interceptors struggled to follow, their larger frames unsuitable for such narrow passageways. Humans were small, flexible, unpredictable. That was the advantage he relied on, and so far it was working. As they emerged from the canyon, the landscape opened to a plateau dotted with defensive turrets and patrols. The stronghold was in sight, but the path to it was treacherous. Ethan calculated the angles, the timing, and the necessary evasions. He could see the child's small hands clutching at Lyra's suit, her trust in him absolute. The thought of losing her now was unbearable. He pushed the ship to its limits, weaving through defensive fire with precise, daring maneuvers. A sudden explosion rocked the ship from behind. Ethan cursed under his breath. One of the Xerthian ships had managed a near hit, sending the vessel into a spin. He countered immediately, twisting the controls, stabilizing the ship. The display lights flashed warnings, but the shields held. Ethan gritted his teeth and pressed forward, guiding them toward a narrow ravine that would allow them to bypass the main defensive lines. Inside the ravine, the ship shook as the walls compressed the space. Ethan used the ship's thrusters in short, controlled bursts, hugging the walls, letting the natural twists of the terrain provide cover. The Xerthians pursued, but Ethan's intimate knowledge of maneuvering gave him the upper hand. He smiled grimly. They underestimated humans, small, simple, but clever. That cleverness had saved them once and would do so again. As they approached the entrance to Lyra's palace, a massive gate loomed ahead. Energy shields shimmered across its surface, powered by advanced technology that even Ethan had never seen before. Lyra's soldiers had prepared defenses, but the Xerthians were close, and time was critical. Ethan studied the gate's control system, recognizing patterns similar to those he had bypassed at the facility. If he could hack it, they could enter without triggering alarms. The ship landed in a secluded courtyard nearby. Ethan unstrapped himself and lifted Arya carefully. The girl hugged him, resting her head against his chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "We're not done yet." "Come on." He led them to the gate's control panel, working quickly to bypass the energy shields. Sparks flew from the interface as the system resisted, but Ethan's hands were steady, precise. Finally, the gates hummed and slowly opened, granting them passage. Inside the palace, the halls were vast, lined with shimmering panels and towering columns. Lyra's soldiers flanked them, keeping watch while Ethan guided mother and child to a secure chamber. The Xerthians were relentless, but the humans and the Queen's forces worked in perfect coordination, using stealth, diversion, and strategy to keep the enemies at bay. Ethan's leadership and quick thinking had become the backbone of this mission. As Arya and Lyra reunited fully in the palace chamber, Lyra knelt, holding her daughter close. Her voice trembled with emotion. "You have brought her back to me. You have given me hope when all seemed lost." Ethan shook his head, humility plain on his face. "I did what anyone would do. She is safe. That is enough for me." Lyra's gaze softened, a mixture of gratitude and respect shining through. But the moment of peace was interrupted. Alarms sounded throughout the palace. Xerthian forces had found a way into the outer defenses. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "We need to move quickly. Follow me." He led Lyra, Arya, and a squad of soldiers through hidden passageways, using his knowledge of tactics and alien architecture to outmaneuver the enemy. Each corner held danger, but Ethan's calm and decisiveness kept everyone alive. In the palace's inner courtyard, a fleet of transport ships waited. Ethan guided Lyra and her child aboard the largest vessel, ensuring the engines were ready for a rapid takeoff. Energy beams and explosions lit the sky as Xerthian troops closed in. The humans' calm and precision shone, weaving the ship through the chaos, dodging fire, and using terrain for cover. Every second was a testament to the human ability to adapt under pressure, to find solutions when none seemed possible. As they reached open space, the Xerthian forces gave chase, but Ethan was prepared. He activated a series of cloaking maneuvers, asteroid field dives, and unpredictable flight paths. The small, agile human-piloted ship evaded destruction again and again, demonstrating an ingenuity that no alien could predict. Lyra watched, awe and gratitude mixing in her eyes. Humans, she realized, were unlike any other species in the galaxy. Their courage, quick thinking, and creativity were unmatched. Finally, after a tense series of maneuvers and near misses, they reached a safe orbit above Lyra's home planet. Ethan allowed himself a moment of relief. Arya was asleep, exhausted but unharmed in her mother's arms. Lyra turned to him, her eyes glistening. "You have done more than any of us could have imagined. You have saved my child and restored hope to my people." Ethan shook his head again, a small smile on his face. "I just did what needed to be done. You and your daughter are safe now. That is all that matters." Lyra reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have shown us the power of humanity, Ethan. Courage, ingenuity, and heart, qualities that no weapon or technology can replace." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Humans were often underestimated in the galaxy, but today they had proved their worth. The palace erupted in celebrations. Soldiers, citizens, and council members gathered to honor the safe return of the child. Ethan remained modest, watching from the sidelines, letting Lyra and Arya take center stage. The reunion between mother and child was emotional, filled with tears, laughter, and relief. Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing he had played a critical role in this story of survival and hope. Even as celebrations continued, Ethan remained vigilant. The Xerthians would not stop, and there were always new threats in the galaxy. But he knew one undeniable truth: humans could face impossible odds, navigate the most dangerous situations, and emerge victorious. Humanity's resourcefulness and courage were not to be underestimated. Arya, now calm and joyful, approached Ethan with a shy smile. "Thank you," she whispered, echoing the gratitude that her mother had expressed. Ethan knelt down, meeting her gaze. "No, Arya, you were brave too. You trusted me. That is what kept us going." She nodded, her small hand reaching out to touch his. In that moment, the bond between human and alien child was sealed, a quiet but powerful testament to trust, courage, and compassion. As night fell over the planet, the palace glowed with soft light. Ethan stood on the balcony, looking out over the city. Fires of past battles still burned faintly, but hope was returning. Lyra had her child back, her people were safe, and humans had shown once more that they were capable of feats that no other species could imagine. Lyra approached him, her daughter asleep in her arms. "You will always have a place among my people, Ethan. You are not just a hero, you are family." Ethan smiled, touched by the words. "I don't need thanks, seeing her safe is enough." In that moment, Ethan understood the full weight of the mission. It was not just about strategy or battle. It was about life, hope, and the connections that bound species together. Humans, despite their flaws and limitations, could rise to extraordinary challenges. Courage, empathy, and ingenuity were weapons in their own right, powerful enough to change the course of the galaxy. As the night deepened, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The child was safe, the queen was reunited with her daughter, and a bond between humans and aliens had been forged that could last generations. The journey was over, but the lessons remained. In a universe of unknown dangers, humanity had the power to endure, to protect, and to inspire. Ethan looked once more at the sleeping child in Lyra's arms and whispered, "She's safe, and that is everything." And for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to breathe fully, knowing that he had done the impossible, proving that humans could face the vast, uncharted challenges of the galaxy and emerge victorious, not through brute strength alone, but through courage, ingenuity, and the heart that defined them.